seems to be under the public school.
Good evening. It's wonderful to see everybody tonight. I would like to call the school board meeting for Tuesday, October 7th, 2025 for the Des Moines Public Schools to order. Ms. Rios, could you please take the roll?
Yes, Ms. Alonso?
Here.
Ms. Campos?
Here.
Mr. Dix?
Here.
Knox? Ms. Martorano?
Here.
Dr. Mayberry Mace?
Here.
Ms. Norris?
Here.
We have quorum.
The first item of business is approval of the agenda. I would like to entertain a motion to revise the meeting agenda and remove the closed session. May I have a motion and a second to approve the revised agenda?
Martorano, so moved.
Mayberry May second.
We have a motion by Ms. Martorano and a second by Ms. Alonso. Any discussion or questions? Just so people are aware, we kept a closed session on in case we needed to meet and discuss litigation, which we do not, which is why we revised the agenda. Board members, please cast your votes.
Mr. Dix is online.
Mr. Dix?
Yes.
The vote is approved 6-0. We are now going to turn to the public forum. Ms. Martorano, I believe you have the next item.
We provide speakers at the forum an opportunity to address the board for up to 3 minutes regarding items that are not on the board agenda and up to 5 minutes for an agenda item. If anyone wishes to speak during any portion of the business meeting, please email rosa.rios@dmschools.org. The same speaking protocols apply to all individuals who wish to address the board. Speakers will be called individually, and we ask that they state their name and zip code prior to providing comments. Students and minors do not have to provide their addresses. Guests of the board are encouraged to speak to matters relating to the programs, services, and operations of DMPS. Please remember that Iowa Code prohibits us from discussing specific employees or their job performance. We ask all speakers to avoid references to personalities or character attacks, as those types of comments do not contribute to the purpose for which this public forum exists. The use of inappropriate language will not be tolerated, and individuals choosing to do so will be gavelled out of order and asked to excuse themselves from the premises or escorted out by district security. As a reminder to the public and board, the board will not engage in discussion with public forum speakers, as it is our obligation to discuss only matters posted in the public agenda for the sake of transparency and opportunity afforded to all community stakeholders. Matters requiring attention will receive appropriate staff and/or board follow-up at a time after the meeting. Thanks for your participation. We appreciate your feedback and input.
Ms. Rios, do we have any speakers for the public forum?
Yes, we do. First up, I'd like to call Samantha Lambert Marsh. Next speaker is Colin Coulter.
My name is Colin Coulter. I live on Garfield Avenue over by Stowe, zip code's 50317, and I'm on my 4th year of teaching at East High School. I'm here today to share good news about East High School. I want to reassure my East Side neighbors about East High and give them confidence that it's well run. Let me explain first to the audience a little bit about the East Side. Over the last 30 years, a lot has changed. The Kmart is now storage units. The discount department store is now storage units. The Albertsons on East 33rd is storage units. The Dolls is gone. The small fabrication plant is now storage units, and Skate East skating rink is gone. I don't know if it's storage units or not. But all this is to say that what happens at East High matters. It is the dominant institution for a third of this city, and the activities and events at East High School and Duke Williams Stadium are pretty much it for the young people on the east side of town. So that's why I come here to talk about East. And what's going on at East is very good. As an East Sider and a taxpayer, I'm very confident and satisfied with what I see at East. Principal Versteeg and the assistant principals are doing a very good job of balancing academics and rigor with the desire to keep students in the building and engage with school. We've seen an incredible 28% rise in our school performance profile. And while we see simultaneous gains at other high schools, our gains at East show that we are awake at the helm and able to capitalize on trends. Faculty enjoy working at East under Principal Versteeg with notably low turnover and stability in the staff. And I want to highlight just how rare it is in the DMPS to have a building with the same administration team for 4 years in a row. And I would like you, the board, and our new superintendent, to do what it takes to keep this trend. Athletics under Mr. Randall and the athletic coaches are making real changes to the lives of young people on the East Side. I live in the neighborhood, and so I get to see how the faculty at East change the course of a young person's life. I have a young neighbor struggled during his 9th grade year, which is, as we know now, the hard year for many students. He thought about dropping out, but then one of the athletics coaches helped him decide to stay. He wanted to play football, and with their help, he turned around his freshman year. And as a sophomore now, I don't know which I'm more proud of, seeing his first interception or the fact that he's passing all of his, well, I'm more proud of the fact that he's passing all of his classes. So we have great programs at East. Our wrestling program regularly goes to state. The same coach who took East softball to state a decade ago can take them now. Our speech and debate program under Coach Jewell has a record of taking students to nationals, and students love seeing Coach Jewell's entire family, Grandpa Jewell included, show up and show out for speech and debate tournaments. Our theater program is award-winning and always a contender for IHSSA's Best Show. And academics are also showing promise at East, with ISAS scores up 10 percentage points in science. And I want to recognize the significant help that the East Science Department gets from our district's curriculum coordinator, Nikki Dorr. She is the best example of servant leadership that I have ever seen. To end, I'll ask the board this. With all that we have going on at East,
30 seconds
with
remaining.
all the skilled leadership and faculty, with the consistent administration, what can you do to give us more time and more money? How can you give the administration at East more autonomy? What can you cut at the district level to generously return money and time to neighborhood schools where taxpayers can be confident in the management of that money? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Max Amazon. You may approach the podium.
Hello, my name is Max Sawyer. I live at East 36 Court, and I'm not originally from here. I'm originally born in Mississippi, raised in Virginia, and we do public schools a little bit different in both states. And I feel like we're going towards the Mississippi model versus the Virginia model, and that's concerning to me. And it's a lot to do with the funding. But, I know that's out of your hands. But with this new referendum, I do ask that maybe some intervention and some, basically, let's get some structure for the students. I see a lot of unsafe stuff out on Lincoln and East when I drive by, at certain times. There's so many of them out and about. I'm nervous about hitting one of them. I know there's a lot of good things going on here. I came here to Iowa because I believed in the Iowa nice. I came here because Iowa was calm. Iowa was a place where it's like, not much happens here, but everything's okay. And I feel like that's moving in a different direction, especially here in Des Moines proper. And I feel like Des Moines is getting left behind. I'll say that I am a senior at Iowa State University in Human Development and Family Studies, so I do have a very big interest in this. And as far as I'll say further, in Virginia, they have a state model, and everything's equitable across the board. And like the gentleman said here, I'm worried about certain schools getting funded, moved, and out of the way, and some of those programs that really keep the kids attended, keep the kids engaged, because we talk a lot about curriculum, but not enough engagement. What are we going to keep the kids engaged with? I know STEM, but we got to go deeper than that. What do the kids want? So maybe there's a survey you can do out there for the kids or something going on, but I'd really like to see that happen, because I'm in cahoots with a lot of dropouts out there that I'm struggling to now get their high set, and it's like, man, if we could have just kept you engaged while you were there, and that's the huge thing. And also, I don't know when attendance to school became not mandatory, it seems like.
30 seconds remaining.
We had security guards that wouldn't let us leave the building without a teacher present. So things like that, and I'll yield my time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next speaker I have is Jacob Weld. Jacob.
She said
Next.
Jacob Weld.
Next speaker is Marshall James.
Good evening. Hello, school board. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm here from Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement and our Public School Strong campaign. And we as an organization and as a campaign express a deep appreciation for the volunteers who care so much about our public education enough to run for school board and put in the hours to administer this important public good. You're here representing the interest of Des Moines Public School families and the wider community who benefit from robust public schools. So we thank you for continuing to do the work, especially at this time when we know there's a lot of attention on Des Moines Public Schools, but we are hearing from folks all around the state. We have strong support for what the mission that we're carrying out here. We really believe in Des Moines Public Schools. We believe in the good work that you are all doing. So we thank you for being here and being present in this moment. I also want to take an opportunity to let folks know that on Monday, October 20th, at the Eastside Library, we're going to be hosting 2 school board members from Chicago Public Schools that will be here talking about the challenges and the triumphs that they've had in Chicago Public Schools. Illinois, for a while, did have a voucher program. It also ran away with their budget. It also caused a lot of knock-on problems, and they have since rescinded their voucher programs in Illinois. So that's something they're going to be talking about. But they will also be talking about what does fully funded public schools mean? What is crafting a vision beyond just surviving, beyond just limiting cuts? Well, how do we see a vision for what it could be and build towards it? And I feel like that's sort of in keeping with the DMPS Reimagine plan. And so I encourage anyone to come out for that. So that's October 20th at 6:30 at the Eastside Library. It's free to the public, open to everyone. We'll be hearing from Jay Travis and G2 Brown from Chicago Public Schools. Thank you all for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker I have is James Sheets. James Sheets.
Yes, James Sheets. I'm a resident here in Des Moines. I live up the street here, a taxpayer, and I have a background in education. I've taught at the secondary level in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and also at the University of Iowa, looking at nonprofit organizations. And I have your petition of law and jury demand here, and I was reading through it, and I just noted some things here. I noticed you accepted the letter of resignation of your former Superintendent Roberts here. And I guess a concerned question is, when you accept a letter of resignation in the middle of the school term, a contract of term, generally that term goes, the performance goes to the end of the term. And if the teacher or administrator doesn't go to the end of the term, it's usually cause for some sort of penalty or censure or referral to the disciplinary board, because it puts the school yourself in a position where the person you hire can't finish the term. And so you accepted the resignation without any apparently objection or protest to that fact. And on the news, it said you accepted a resignation because you didn't want any further distraction. I suppose I was looking at the educational fallout, but we're also looking at an issue of contractual integrity, and it doesn't seem there's anything further on that. I do note that if he was working here without legal status, his application was a fraud on the contract, and his application to the board for his licensure was a fraud on the contract license to the board. And so this individual was paid twice as much as our governor gets, and has deeply enriched himself with over $500,000 in 2 years. That's quite a way to throw money around. And you're asking me here on November to vote a tax raise when you just sort of tossed a lot of money off in a situation. It just doesn't make sense. And so I think, with all due respect to your lawsuit, which you put out
30
here.
seconds remaining.
Okay. So that's sort of the concern I have. I do have the DOJ's letter to you here with regard to your issues on affirmative action, noting that the superintendent shall not allow a composition of teaching and learning staff to diverge from demographics and cultural responsivity. So we're looking at issue of a policy of a diversity, and diversity is not the same as value. It's not the same as merit.
Time.
So we consider those as policy concerns in your decision making. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
you. Next speaker is Charles Coates. Yes.
Yeah. Agreed.
Next speaker is Thune Palczewski. I think it's in the corner.
Merle Hay Road. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for your time. I'm not here to pick on any one of you specifically, and I want to make this as nice as I can. My concern is that since Mr. Roberts' arrest, more and more issues have come out regarding his integrity, really his character. The board is charged with evaluating one Des Moines Public School employee, and that is the superintendent. It seems like I said, I'm trying to be as nice as I can about this. That's kind of a failure on the end of the board. The leadership here, I believe, has become more of a distraction than anything. I feel like the lawsuits are just chasing ghosts, really, at this point. I mean, what's done is done. So, along with that, and then the board measure, or the bond measure that we have in November, I think it would be appropriate at this time for the board to resign, just because of all the distraction that's coming from it. I know all of you don't represent my district, and it's up to each one of you to make that decision. But once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is John Von Gillern.
See if this mic was made for people that are 6'2". John Von Gillern, 940 66th Street, West Des Moines. I know I'm from West Des Moines, but I do have children in the district. I actually do a lot of public speaking, so I'm hoping, but I'm really overwhelmed by all of this, so I hope you'll excuse me stuttering, although I seem to be doing good so far.
You're doing great.
I really do mean this sincerely. Thank you for being on the school board. I know that it's an incredible amount of time and effort, and I'm sure it feels rather thankless at times. It's my understanding that this is an unpaid position. I think the district should change that. It's a lot of work. You should get paid for it. And you have my genuine sympathy for what you're going through right now with the Dr. Roberts debacle. I have talked with several friends and acquaintances that work in the district, and all have had glowing reviews of Dr. Roberts. One said, "I've seen him more in the last year than I saw the superintendent in my last district in 15 years. Being present, visible, and inspirational are all laudable goals, but I ask you, is that the primary role of a superintendent? A $300,000 a year mascot to rally the troops, or should a superintendent be someone with integrity so they can make sound policy decisions for the district?" I think that it's the latter. I do feel, it feels like the board is abdicating responsibility and shifting blame to JG Consulting, but a cursory examination exposes a lot of red flags. Did any of I know that not all of you were on the board at the time that he was voted in, but did you look at his LinkedIn? Like, if you look at his education section, he lists Georgetown, Morgan State, Harvard, MIT, St. John's, Coppin, and Trident. It's certainly possible that all of those things are true, but wouldn't you want to dig a little bit? Like, if someone is embellishing that much, and it's beyond embellishing, he did not go to MIT. He did not get his degree from Morgan State. Like, it just, come on. The superintendent needs to have integrity. He's been calling himself a doctor when he finished without an Ed.D. in 2007 at Morgan State, all the way up through when he actually got an Ed.D. from an online diploma mill. That alone should have disqualified him. It sounds like you were all aware of this discrepancy and waved it away.
30 seconds remaining.
I would call on the board to hire a third-party investigator to examine what the board knew about all of these misdeeds and when they knew it or if they excused it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Rick Malcolm. Those are all the public speakers. Just confirming the other speakers are for other agenda items. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, with that, we are going to move to district recognitions. Superintendent Smith, are there any recognitions today?
There are. There's an amazing recognition today. Earlier this year, we welcomed Dr. Gregory Berard and several of his students to a board meeting to talk about their recent trip to Fiji, where they studied endangered nautilus and other sea life in their natural environment. This was an amazing opportunity for learning to take place and knowledge to be shared, not in a classroom nor in a lab, but out in the field. The trip to Fiji was just one of countless examples of Dr. Berard's excellence as an educator, and a contributing factor to why we have invited him back this evening. It is a great honor that we recognize Dr. Berard on being named an outstanding biology teacher by the National Association of Biology Teachers. He is one of only 27 teachers across the entire country to earn this distinction. To be selected, teachers must complete a rigorous application process demonstrating excellence in the classroom, devotion to students, and a commitment to professionalism recognized by peers. Dr. Berard certainly checks all three boxes and then some. It is my pleasure to ask Dr. Berard to come forward to be recognized, honored, and celebrated.
So thank you again. Thanks to the board. Thanks to DMPS and really Central Campus for the support. I'm not a native Iowan. I came here through Phoenix, Alaska, New York, everywhere, and just kind of came here because I wanted to do something different. And I really kind of can feel that kind of come here, become here. And the only sad part right now of this is like the awards and recognition is really great, but I hope it like uplifts other teachers to, try to apply to these different things, because I work with a ton of great teachers at Central Campus. We work with teachers all around DMPS, and it's kind of hard to try and put yourself out there to be recognized, because sometimes we just kind of, sit and we want to be the silent, kind of crusaders, but I think it's not the time to be silent. Like, we have great teachers in DMPS, and we even have better students, because really, without the students taking a chance to come to a marine biology program or any course that is really, really hard. I mean, the expectations I have for them are incredible, but they do it every single day. They make themselves uncomfortable. I'm a little uncomfortable doing these things, but really it's the students that, enable all of these things, and really I share this with them. So I thank you all again very much.
Thank you. We are now going to move on to the consent agenda. As a reminder to the board and public, the board will not engage in discussion or deliberation with a speaker regarding comments made to the agenda items. Discussion and deliberation will remain among board members at the board table, with speakers' comments informing the board's discussion, deliberation, and determinations as deemed necessary. Ms. Rios, do we have any speakers?
None for consent.
Ms. Martirano, I believe you have the consent motion.
I move that the board approve the consent items in accordance with the recommended action for each item on the consent agenda, including bills previously authorized, certified, and approved for payment by the board secretary in the amount of $6,926,989.33, and P-card transactions in the amount of $610,886.41.
We have a motion. May I have a second?
Campos, second.
We have a motion by Ms. Martirano and a second by Ms. Campos. Are there any discussions or questions? Okay, at this moment, please vote. Mr. Dix?
Yes.
Ms. Knox? Okay. The board is approved. The consent items are approved 6-0. Now we have a series of public hearings. The first item is E1, public hearing for C1P 3514 Roosevelt High School exterior wall restoration. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to this item? Hearing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Smith, would you please introduce the matter?
I recommend that the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by Angelo Architecture Associates for masonry restoration at Roosevelt High School, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I have a motion and a second to approve this item?
Campos, second.
We have a motion by Ms. Martirano and a second by Ms. Campos. Any discussion or questions? Board members, please cast your votes. Mr. Dix?
Yes.
The vote is approved 6-0. The next item is E2, public hearing for C1P 3515 Callanan Middle School re-roofing project. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to this item? Hearing no speakers, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Smith, would you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by Angelo Architectural Associates for re-roofing at Callanan Middle School, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I have a motion and a second to approve this item?
Mayberry Mays move.
Alonso, second.
We have a motion by Dr. Mayberry Mays and a second by Ms. Alonso. Are there any discussion or questions? Board members, please cast your votes. Mr. Dix?
Yes.
The vote is approved 6-0. The next item is E3, public hearing for C1P 3516 Hoover High School window replacement. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to this item? Hearing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Smith, would you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by Angelo Architectural Associates for window replacement at Hoover High School, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I have a motion and a second to approve this item?
Alonso, so moved.
Martirano, second.
We have a motion by Ms. Alonso and a second by Ms. Martirano. Are there any discussion or questions at this point? Board members, please cast your votes. Mr. Dix? Yes. The vote is approved 6-0. Now we will move on to our other business agenda items. First, we have F1, the petition from Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement Public Schools Strong. May I have a motion and a second to discuss this item?
Mayberry Mays move.
We have a motion by Dr. Mayberry Mays and a second by Ms. Alonso. Ms. Rios, do we have any public speakers for this item?
Yes, we do. First up, I'd like to call Donna Wallace.
My name is Donna Wallace. My zip code is 50316. I live near the Grandview University area. I'm a member of Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement and part of Public Schools Strong. I've been a substitute teacher with Des Moines Public Schools since 2001, except for 2 years when I was a full-time contract teacher, also in Iowa. I'm also a proud mom of a 2018 high school graduate of North High School. We're here representing Public Schools Strong, a nationwide movement to advocate for fully funded schools. To that end, we are encouraging public school board members around the state to adopt a resolution calling for a rise in state supplemental aid and a phase out of the private school voucher program that is depriving our public schools of much needed funds. We hope to explain this reasoning for this resolution now, and we are very grateful for this opportunity to do so before this board and before the DMPS community. We want to begin our comments by stating clearly that we are in full support of the reimagined DMPS bond referendum. The bond funds are critical to our school infrastructure and can bring our schools into the 21st century. DMPS has not sought a bond in over 30 years, and we are well past due for an infusion of funds for facilities improvements. However, the bond's funding cannot be used on all school system needs. Bond funds cannot be used on hiring teachers or giving them pay increases or for supplies and equipment needed in the classrooms. These costs are covered by state funding, which is why Public School Strong is calling for that funding to increase as well. The bond is a critical component of a well-funded Des Moines Public Schools community, but cannot be the end of our fight. So why are we calling for this now? For decades, Iowa fully funded its public schools and reaped the benefits of having a top-of-the-nation education system. It was a system that Iowans of all political stripes, rural and urban alike, took great pride in. However, decades of chronic underfunding from the state government has caused Iowa's once renowned educational achievements to slip. We believe that the energy and motivation for change is present now in every community in our state. And we believe that the school boards have a duty as elected leaders to raise their voices and call for increased fundings for our kids. That is why we are here today asking DMPS to adopt this resolution. The state of our school systems is struggling, and we know that the major cause of the struggle is a simple one: lack of funding. To quote Jennifer Berkshire and Jack Schneider from their book, The Education Wars, few of us have ever made the case that local schools have too many resources or that the facilities have gotten a bit too posh. One rarely hears the argument that the curriculum is too engaging and relevant, rendering ordinary life a bore by comparison instead. We observe the gap between what is and what ought to be, and we engage in the great American pastime of complaining about our schools. Indeed, when was the last time any of us heard about school funding that was not discussing what programs have to be cut, what fundraisers have to be done to patch up a shortfall? Aren't we tired of talking about our school budgets always shrinking? We teach our kids to go the extra mile. So can we. Our children deserve more than to simply survive. They deserve the very best we can provide for them. The way we do that most equitably and cost effectively is through full public funding of our public schools, as we did when Iowa was top of the nation. Thank you.
Next speaker is Sean Vauchel.
Hello, my name is Sean Vauchel, and I am a member of Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement and part of the Public School Strong team. I am also in my 19th year as a teacher in Des Moines Public Schools, my 11th year at Central Academy. One child is a 2020 graduate of Roosevelt High School. The other one is a 2025 graduate of Roosevelt High School, so my roots in DMPS go deep. So many Iowans remember when we had one of the best public education systems in the country. During that time, the funding schools received from the state increased every year by as much as 14%. However, since the 1990s, annual increases have fallen below 5% and have hovered around 2% for the past decade. Considering that inflation increases every year by approximately 3%, the state is actually giving schools less money from one year to the next. Our schools have suffered for it. State supplemental aid accounts for approximately half of all public school funding, and the diminishing rate of funding correlates directly with declining education rankings. Iowa has fallen from among the top 3 states in the nation to the middle of the pack, around 28th place. Importantly, state supplemental aid is the primary funder of teacher pay. So when allowable growth rates decrease or remain stagnant, districts are limited in their ability to offer pay raises and attract new talent. The Iowa State Education Association, of which I am also a proud member, has for years asked the state to increase supplemental aid by 5% annually, plus an adjustment for inflation. We join them in their call. Iowa's leaders must do right by our students and educators by committing to a minimum 5% annual funding increase in state supplemental aid. Now, you may be asking, how do we pay for it? This has been an excuse for years to justify lower funding for schools. People say Iowa simply doesn't have the money to fully fund our children's education anymore. This excuse is proven faulty both by our history of robust school funding and by recent developments. The state is already spending over $350 million each year to subsidize tuition at private schools through the ESA voucher program. This, combined with over $1 million paid annually to a New York management firm to oversee this scheme, is a lot of money that could be going to fund public education, which is open to all students. If our leaders took all the money spent on the vouchers and folded it into supplemental aid to public schools, we would see an annual increase of over 8%, well above the 5% for which we are calling. Clearly, there is enough money to fully fund our schools when the politicians want to find it. Why are they able to find the money when this voucher program came around, but then turned out empty pockets in years prior? Here are the facts. Our public schools need more funding, that money is available, and it is currently being spent on the new private school subsidies. In order to fund a more appropriate level of public education spending, we are also calling on lawmakers to phase out the voucher program, which my colleague will speak to next. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker I have is Becky Evans.
Hello, my name is Becky Evans. My zip code is 50311. I am the parent of 2 recent Roosevelt graduates who are now pursuing further education at the University of Iowa. I also work part-time for DMPS as a school bus driver. I am a member of Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement, and I am part of our Public School Strong team. In 2023, Iowa's legislature enacted the Education Savings Account Program, a voucher scheme which promised more choice for Iowa families. These vouchers take a portion of our tax money that would have gone to public schools and gives it to families to spend at a private school. While this may seem harmless and even good, in reality, this program is a terrible deal for Iowa taxpayers. First of all, and this may sound redundant, but public money should be spent on public goods. The taxes collected from us form the basis for all of our public goods: roads, bridges, emergency responders, mail delivery, libraries, and schools. These goods are shared by all of us, benefit all of us, which is why the funding of them through taxes just makes sense. Now, these public goods are not restrictions. If you don't want to use the library, you're free to spend your money at a bookstore. We do not seek to disparage private schools as an option if a family wants to spend their own money on that choice. Much like the bookstore, private schools offer an alternative to the community offering. However, no one would suggest that we take funding that should go to the library and offer it as Barnes & Noble gift cards to those who don't want to use the library, but this is effectively what the voucher program is. Furthermore, the vouchers cost a lot more per pupil than sending them to public school. This is because in addition to the nearly $8,000 per voucher, there's a small kickback given to the public schools for each voucher given to soften the blow from losing students. This amount is a fraction of what the public schools lose in the deal, while still being a massive extra cost to taxpayers when totaled up. This program also costs approximately $1 million annually just to administer, which is done by an out-of-state firm, siphoning tax dollars away from our state. Initial projections for the cost of the program were way underestimated. Des Moines Register reports that Iowa spent $130 million on the program during the first year, when nearly 17,000 students received education savings accounts. That's about $23 million more than they had initially projected, so they miscalculated by 17%. The Register goes on to report that more than 30,000 students were approved for ESAs in the 24 to 25 school year, which cost more than $234 million. It's been reported the program is projected to cost $350 million annually starting in 2025. So these vouchers are costing a lot more than initially expected. In addition to this, the vouchers are not really providing the school choice that its proponents have championed. And my next colleague will explain this further. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Michael Gregory Farley.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Michael Farley. I live on the south side, 50321, and I'm a part of the CCI's Public School Strong program. We were told that the ESA voucher legislation would give parents a school choice. In the 2023-2024 school year, 17,000 families applied and received vouchers to pay tuition to attend private school, though 86% of those families already sent their children to private school. The other 14%, 2,380 families, were the only ones who took advantage of school choice, for which Iowa paid $130 million for. Next year, the 2025 Iowa state budget increased state supplemental aid by 2%, an increase of $62.7 million spread over 300-plus school districts. Next year, it's estimated that Iowa will spend $111 million more for 40,000 private school students in 254 schools, not school districts. When the ESA bill was passed, there were 44 counties that did not have a private school alternative to send their children to. But their legislators were bullied into voting for this boondoggle. School choice and competition will make public schools better are myths. Where is the school choice? The vast majority of voucher recipients were already paying for their own schooling without issue. Now there is no longer even an income cap to qualify for vouchers. Next year, as you struggle with budget shortfalls, program and staff cuts, the richest families in Iowa take money away from public schools to cover cost of private schools that they were going to attend anyway. The entire premise of public education system is that everyone has access to it and the public gets oversight of it. You are our oversight. A group of volunteers, dedicated, hardworking, members of the public who provide oversight of this critical public good on behalf of the citizens. Private schools do not have this. In fact, the legislation creating vouchers explicitly exempted private schools from many financial regulations and reporting that is required of public schools. And they can pick and choose who they allow for admission. We believe private schools should not have to be the same as public schools because they are not public schools. But we do not believe that such a school should receive tax dollars from the public. And that was the policy in Iowa from 1846 to 2023. And it worked. It seems we have created a second education system in Iowa. Does this remind you of anything in our past, like separate but equal? We've been down this road before, and it's a path of division and resentment. As long as the ESAs are in place, there is no fully funded, honest and transparent, safe, equitable public schools. This is why we demand the phase out of ESAs along with our ask for adequate state supplemental aid increases. Public money should be spent on public schools and public institutions. In closing, I was around in 1989 when DMPS asked for a bond referendum to upgrade public school facilities and buildings. These funds were as critical then for my children as they are now for yours. There was a time when education, public safety, and the well-being of the entire community was the responsibility of the entire community. Let's come together now to invest in each other as the best way to ensure our shared futures. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker I have is Cherie Mortiz.
Thank you, Board, for this opportunity to speak, and to the Des Moines Public School community, who I'm also addressing at this point. My name is Cherie Mortiz. I live on the east side of Des Moines, and I am a member of Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement and a member of Des Moines Public School Strong. And I'm a retired school teacher in Des Moines Public Schools after 40 years of service. You may be wondering why we are asking Des Moines Public School Board to take a stand on this. We have heard from a few board members and administrators outside of Des Moines Public Schools that have raised concerns that taking a stand on state funding policy may be out of line because they don't want to get political. Well, first of all, for the majority of Iowa's history, fully funded public education has always been a nonpartisan, mainline Iowa value. Iowans across the political spectrum recognize that educating all of our young people is a primary responsibility of government and duty of our society. Numerous polls and studies show that well-funded public education is a broadly popular, nonpartisan position in Iowa. Whether in rural communities or large cities like Des Moines, the public school is a pillar of community life that reflects the achievement and pride of small and urban communities. It is also a cultural anchor, and perhaps most importantly, our public schools are foundational pillars of our democracy. This nonpartisanship extends to the traditional public-private school relationship. Iowans recognize that public school is an important pillar of the community, and that private school is an option for families who want an alternative. For generations, private school families have understood without issue that their choice was one for which they would carry a cost. School funding has only become a political issue recently due to the influence of powerful, for-profit, often out-of-state interests. These groups see the public treasury as a resource to plunder and wealth that could be lining the pockets of their shareholders. Their choice to make a nonpartisan issue into a partisan one should not silence our elected officials. Our silence only emboldens them to politicize everything. Furthermore, the simple fact is public school boards are elected positions, meaning politics is inherent in the job. While we can and should seek to keep school boards nonpartisan, not beholden to any particular political party dogma, we should not act as if policymaking, the very heart of politics, isn't happening in this room. The duty of this board is to represent the needs of our community and school district on matters pertaining to the administration of our public schools. And the truth is, our public schools need more state funding. We acknowledge that a lot of attention is on Des Moines Public Schools right now in light of the recent events. But this moment in time is the time to take a bold stance for our students. Appeasement and bowing have gotten this district nowhere. Educators and administrators from around the state are looking to you, the leaders of the largest, most diverse district in the state. Other Iowa districts want to rally around Des Moines Public Schools and are sympathetic to the circumstances we find ourselves in. The response in Des Moines was immediate. Hundreds have shown up to support Des Moines Public Schools. You have the attention and support of thousands of families and community members. I think it is important for you to know, and for the public to know, that you are not only the Iowa School Board that is being represented with this resolution to support. It is happening in other school districts throughout Iowa. But with eyes on you at this moment, we urge you to lead boldly and adopt this resolution calling on the state to keep public money public and to fully fund our schools and to stop the erosion of dollars that vouchers are tearing into. Public schools will not be sustainable if vouchers are not dismantled. To publicly demonstrate your support by signing this resolution is a testament to the public that you are ready and willing to fulfill your duty and commitment to support fully funded public schools. And I will end my comments on that note. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The last speaker I have for this agenda item is Hugh Espy. Yes, Hugh.
Thank you. So my name's Hugh Espy. I live here in Des Moines on 1005 63rd Street, 50311. Windsor Heights is on the other side. And I've been in, by the way, I might say Iowa CCI. I'm a longtime Iowa CCI member. Worked for Iowa CCI since 1979 as a community organizer. And we had a president one time who was a community organizer. And maybe we'll have another one at some point. But I've been here in Des Moines continuously since '84. And my two sons are products of the Des Moines, proud products of the Des Moines public school system. We have no complaints. My son Paul graduated from Roosevelt in '99. My son Sam has graduated in 2001 from Roosevelt. They went to Callanan, and then for grade school they were at King Perkins. That's when King Perkins were together, kind of like K through 5. I don't know if you remember that or not. Anyway, that's just a little bit of background. But by the way, Iowa CCI this summer celebrated its 50th anniversary, and I got my Farm Aid hat on because Farm Aid celebrated its 40th anniversary just a couple of weeks ago, and we were up in Minneapolis for us. We love Willie and Neil and John Mellencamp and Margot Price and all of the folks at Farm Aid. But our public schools, being underfunded is not a new thing. It's been going on for years. It didn't start with Kim Reynolds. People say, oh, Kim Reynolds. It didn't start with her. It's been going on for years. But her public, the private voucher program has made things worse. Since they were enacted in '83, private vouchers have drained nearly over $650 million from our public schools. We think that public money should be used for public schools. I don't have anything against private schools. Private schools gave us Caitlin Clark. How can you be opposed to that, right? Dowling? Go Dowling. Go the Maroons. But we think, but we think public money should be used for public schools. Public schools are bedrock institutions in our communities and our democracy. You know, we have elected school boards that are accountable to the public. We have public budgets and audits. We have universal education, open to all students, abilities, identities, whatever, all students. Doesn't matter who you are or how much money you have, you're welcome at our public schools. We like that. That's good for democracy. That's good for civil society. That's good for how we function as a people and get along. And it's good for freedom, too, you know, and to kind of expand our minds and learn new things. They're essential for a living, public schools are essential for living in a multicultural democracy. You know, I was looking at my son's, Sam's second grade pictures, you know, those cute pictures they take. And of his class, you know, there was like 21 kids in his second grade class. 9 were people of color. I thought that was pretty cool, you know, considering Iowa. It's not bad. But public schools are essential for living in a multicultural society. Public money should be used for the public good. We're asking you, the school board, to support us and adopt this resolution. You know, we need to send a message to people at the State House that we're going to fight tooth and nail to support public education, public schools. Because there's folks, you know right now, that folks up at the State House are talking about trying to take over the Des Moines public school system. I'm not trying to kind of like alarm you or whatever, but there's folks that are talking about them telling us, how to run schools. That's not right. We have to fight for Des Moines public schools. We have to fight for public education. And this resolution, our public school strong resolution, is one way to do that and to put folks on notice up at the State House that we're going to fight tooth and nail for our public schools, for our kids and grandkids in our community and our democracy. So thank you.
Okay. There we go. So, is that right?
No.
Is that working? Hello. Okay. So board members, I thought what the original plan, as Superintendent Smith and I talked, was that we would use this as a catalyst to have a conversation about our legislative agenda. And I thought I'd provide just a little bit of history, and then we'll dig into the issues that are being discussed. So as a reminder, our DMPS is a member of the Iowa Association of School Boards, and Anna represents us on that. And one of the best things about IASB is that it represents a very large, we're actually the largest school district. It also represents some of the small rural districts, which actually serves us both well because of the diversity of legislators that we cover. We are also members of the Urban Education Network, which Superintendent Smith will be taking over that role in partnership with me. That'll transition at some point in the next few months. They focus on representing the large urban districts, and it keeps growing. Des Moines was actually one of the founding members, but then it expanded, and now you've got Ankeny and some of the other suburban schools. And so that is the UEN. We also partner or are aware of the ISEA and their legislative agenda. They have advocacy coffees, and they have a legislative agenda too that informs how we think about policy. And then we also have had an active, probably up until last year, CLAT, Community Legislative Action Team. I think it is amazing to see Public Schools Strong because they have really created a vehicle for action in our community, and it seems to be growing, and that's actually really exciting to see. And so I share all of that because those are the groups that we turn to when we're talking about our legislative agenda. Des Moines is again going to be represented by Policy Works, and it will be Jake Frederickson, Bipartisan, and Christopher Rance. And they will begin the policy update process as they kind of get their lay of the land from what's happening in the legislature. The last year, just as a reminder, historically, our legislative agenda was one thing, and it was pre-K. And that was something that I think as a board, we have been very focused on. The research shows it works, and we thought that it was a high priority to just focus on that. One of the things that I think was really important last year was that the way we partnered last year looked far different. Because what we did is we didn't go it alone. We actually worked in partnership with Christian schools and other private schools to advocate for pre-K. And so everybody went all in together as a coalition to lead and advocate for pre-K. And so I think one of the topics we have to talk about tonight is what is our legislative agenda, and how do we kind of approve, and what does it look like when we talk about approving a legislative agenda? Historically, the way we've done it is with our board members who represent. So in this case, Anna with IASB, or Matt with UEN, or others through CLAT or ISEA. And so what I did was I quickly just tried to look at a few things around what the specific wording of the petition says. So I want to go over that. And then what some of the other groups are talking about as it relates to 2025 legislative priorities. So bear with me. I think I've got this right, and feel free to shout out and correct me if I get it wrong. But in the resolution, what Public School Strong is calling out specifically is annual 5% increase of state supplemental aid, maintaining an income cap for ESAs, so for the educational savings accounts, an income cap, so everybody doesn't get it. It's only connected to poverty. Phasing out the educational saving account voucher program over the next 5 years, and then using public funds for public schools only. Interestingly enough, when you look at the legislative agenda for UEN, when you look at the legislative agenda for IASB, they are pretty much consistent. It may, I'm assuming that ISEA has I'm going to look back there, has something around supplemental state aid on their legislative agenda as well. So there's a lot of consistency. I think the things that we really need to talk about are kind of how we want to approach the conversation about setting the legislative agenda. Historically, it's been done in partnership with the superintendent. Look, there's no shortage of feistiness and advocacy from this board. I mean, we have been outspoken on banned books. We've been outspoken on the need for pre-K, outspoken on the need to support kids in poverty. And so, and yet we've always just kind of done it, or we've done it individually, or we've done it in the way that made sense to us based on the relationships we had. I think the conversation that I just want to dig into a little bit is, how do we want to move forward? Do we want to remain with kind of pre-K as our cornerstone item? Do we want to kind of say these key items are ones that we support? Do we want to pass a resolution, which historically has not been the way the board has chosen to operate? So I need a little feedback, but I thought what we'll start with is, let's actually talk about the legislative issues that have been surfaced. And the last thing I will say is that new to this year, I think, and last year, we really started digging in a little bit more on federal issues. Some of you may have participated in the call we did with Congressman Nunn to elevate the importance of title funding and the need to not cut title funding. And so we've got both federal issues and state issues that we need to address. So let's just start with either clarifying questions around how we've operated, or questions that require more information, and then let's dig into how we want to move forward. And before we do that, is there anything you want to say based on the conversation we've had?
No, I mean, I think you captured it perfectly. That's probably helpful. I thought you captured it really, really well. There was a comment made earlier that I just want to reference, and this notion of just simple mathematics, right? When we consider supplemental state aid in the last decade being 2%, when inflation is about average on 3%. That doesn't sound like a lot. I can tell you, when you were in the budget process year after year after year, making millions and millions of cuts year after year after year for the last decade, it is significant. And it grows and it compounds on itself every single year. And so when we throw a percentage around in a conversation like this with folks sitting and listening and watching, it may sound fairly insignificant it is not insignificant when it actually becomes and manifests into millions of dollars that actually pays for staffing and programming for students.
Yeah, thank you. The only other thing I'll say is when you look at the ISB proposed legislative platform, and I think Rosie emailed it to everybody, but they address supplemental state aid, they address ESAs, they address public funding. The only thing they don't do, and UEN doesn't either, is set a number. They don't start with a number. So in the case of 5%, they actually just look at a series of things, and they look at the budget projections that come out in both November and December. They look at potential inflation numbers, and they then come up with what they think is the request, whether it's 5% or a different number. So they don't always come with a set number at a starting point. So let's just start with some general conversation about advocacy strategies. I mean, I think currently our board has just behaved. I know I've gone up with Dr. Roberts a lot and advocated with our legislators, talked about our issues. Other people have been invited to do that. We've had legislators come and visit pre-K classrooms, and I think some of you have shown up for that. So let's just talk about it, get some discussion going.
Jackie, in the past, we've had multiple focuses on our legislative approach, which included an increase in SSA. Last year, I believe, was the first year where we strictly focused on preschool funding alone. In fact, I even remember that we had a legislative priority that included specifically funding for our multilingual learners and programming around English learners. Can you talk a little bit about the reason for focusing specifically on pre-K versus having 3 legislative priorities as we've had in the past?
My understanding was it was really an attempt to just say, like, the hill we're going to die on is pre-K, and that's where we want to focus. That's not to say that we all advocated for increasing state supplemental aid to keep up with inflation. It was just a matter of where the direction that we were giving to the team. But this team of IASB, UEN, ISEA, PolicyWorks, they're always up there advocating for the most amount of supplemental state aid they can get, right? But it's based on a series of economic measures that aren't yet, I think, public. So I think it's really up to us. I mean, there is not a hard and fast rule. I think, what do they say? If you put everything on the table, it's like, then nothing's a priority if you have, a lot of priorities. I think we can expand that if that's what people want to do. There's also been discussion about not just increasing SSA, but also flexibility in the funding buckets. That's been a big discussion of late because there's so much restriction on what you can spend for what dollar figure. And so I just love to hear I think that's a great question. I think it's up to us to decide. I don't think we should have 5, 7, 10.
Agree.
I think that's too hard.
Is it also an accurate statement that when bills are presented around SSA or around various other agendas, that we as a district will sign on or in support of those particular bills, even if they are outside of the realm of our legislative priority of pre-K? That's an accurate statement.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Other feedback or thoughts on this?
My comments would be centered around kind of for our legislative priorities and agenda that I think this is not the time to be silent and focus on one thing. There are multiple issues that exist. So while I do believe pre-K is certainly important, I do believe that an increase in SSA is important for us to also voice. So I would say those would probably be the 2 priorities, particularly for me, from what I've heard from different constituent populations.
I think there would be some good conversation and agreement on untangling the funding streams. It is hard, I think, sometimes for taxpayers to see that there are millions of dollars coming into Des Moines Public Schools. Why can't you use them for the things that you say you want to do? Why are you asking for more money? And giving local control back to school districts, I think, should be a priority of this district to give us more flexibility in the way we spend the money that the state entrusts us with. When I think about our legislative priorities, I think they should match our the priorities that we have put forward as goals. It should be about pre-K, it should be about reading, and it should be about career growth. Those are things that I think as singles would be very hard to argue because it's a lot of what you hear out of the majority party at the State House. So I think that would give us maybe some flexibility to talk about programs that support those issues. State supplemental funding allows a policymaker to say, well, I'm not just giving you money for anything, whereas if we are fighting for specific priorities, I think that's harder to argue. And I think that would be a better targeted, more specific argument if we say, we need to get our kids reading at grade level by 3rd grade. Research shows preschool gets kids off to a better start, and we need to make sure that we engage our kids through junior high and high school by giving them a career pathway that gets them out to being productive citizens, either through employment enlistment or enrollment. And so I think it's very much what we've been saying, and it would really align with what we're already talking about. And it would also, as a matter of fact, align with what some folks who are in the majority at the State House say. And so I would be in favor of a targeted legislative agenda that deals with those issues.
And to be clear, those issues are pre-K.
Pre-K, reading,
then,
career.
Okay, but state supplemental aid is really predominantly addresses salaries more than anything. And so I just want to make sure the career, is that a standalone legislative agenda? And if so, what is it?
I think if you added in more flexibility to our funding streams to that, I think we could then choose to address how we use the resources in our district. I think all of those things combined, and I'm sorry I left that out, the flexibility of the funding streams would be the last piece of that would allow us, if you want to put money in a specific program, that's fine. That then frees up state supplemental aid for us to do more with what we want to with it. And it might allow more resources to be open to those areas.
Okay.
To be honest, let's look at our district. Pre-K is very important to us. And then the early literacy, and then also taking care of our teachers in the school supplemental state aid. I think those are my 3 that I think we need to push this year.
Similar to Dr. Mayberry May's pre-K and an increase in SSA.
Yeah, and I think, to be clear, and I really appreciate you bringing that up, Kim, which is, that's not to say that DMPS isn't advocating for the other things. It's really just giving some direction to our Policy Works folks. I might suggest something that I thought really was helpful, and IASB does that, which they have specific policy items that they want to advocate for, and then they have values. And so one of the things that maybe we could consider is a value statement around public school dollars, right? So how public school dollars should be spent. And I think, I could even go so far as to recommend something about public funds for public schools only as a statement that could work as a value. I think I'd love for people to think about that. And then, the state supplemental aid, it's really up to you if we want to pick a number or if we want to just say an increase in state supplemental aid. And we can always come back with the lobbyists and have that conversation, because I think we want the most money possible to be able to pay our staff well. And historically, what we know is that 2.5 or 2.4, I forget last year what the number was, doesn't actually keep up with salaries. So, maybe we can not pick a number, but correlate it to, cost of living or something like that, or inflation. I'm really open, but how do people feel about if we kind of said pre-K, obviously, and I think our priority was free all-day pre-K for kids, and I think we did put it at poverty rate, so for kids at 180% of poverty. And then for state supplemental aid, we'll just say an increase that is maybe aligned with inflation. That's how a couple of people have written, like aligned with inflation. So, and then a value statement around public funds for public schools only. And then if we put that as a legislative agenda, then we can approve it. It is not a resolution, but it, I think, is a public statement of how we feel because we will approve it. Is that how people would like to handle this?
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Can I make a suggestion that we receive and consider CCI's resolution as a part of our deliberation of a legislative agenda, and then maybe make a recommendation to be brought back to us for with the elements that you put in there to be brought back so that we could further consider the agenda or the legislative agenda, or would you rather simply leave it that we give our priorities to our
We write them up. I
legislative
mean,
team?
we always, as a board,
Okay,
always
all right.
approve a legislative agenda. So this informs the legislative agenda. The IASB has theirs, the UEN has theirs, the Public School Strong has theirs. And so all of those things inform it. And then we kind of write it up and then have the board approve it. So I think, this is keeping in line with practice, which is not doing individual resolutions, but I hope it aligns with what is really important to Public School Strong, that we continue to show our feistiness and our might. And I will say, for those of you who know us, we're not quiet. And I think, we are a big district and everybody watches us and we take on the tough fights. And I don't think we ever want to shy away from that. As a board, I think we've been pretty comfortable talking about literacy and addressing banned books and some of the things that are happening at our State House. And in whatever spirit we want to keep trying to represent that and show that and demonstrate that, I think, open to suggestions. So just to recap, what I think is happening is I'm going to take this, write it up, I'll work with Superintendent Smith, we'll come back, put it in front of the full board, as well as the ISB legislative agenda, the UEN legislative agenda, this resolution, and if there's any other legislative agenda that we need to put in front of us, so everybody feels like this is something that we're comfortable with as a board. Good? Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you for letting me have that conversation with all of you. I think the only other thing I would say is I do think that we are going to have to think about how our federal agenda is represented and whether or not that's going to continue to be through the Council of Great City Schools. But there are really significant issues happening at the federal level, especially around our title dollars. And, we tried with Congressman Nunn, and I think, I'm not sure how far we got, but we're going to have to keep an eye on the title dollars because that is a significant amount of money that our district receives. So, okay. All right. With that, we are going to move to item F2. And actually, before we do that, I do want to make sure that Iowa CCI and Public School Strong hears how important you are to us. You have sat through so many meetings. You have been cheerleaders. You have been fighting. And I run into people all across the state that are wearing their Public School Strong T-shirts. And so as school boards, I just want to make sure we show our appreciation to you. I don't know if anybody will just give you a round of applause because it is really important. Okay, next item is F2, request for School Budget Review Committee for modified allowable growth for EL excess costs. Superintendent Smith, would you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board approve the request to School Budget Review Committee for modified allowable growth in the amount of $1,478,432.82 due to the limited English program. Allowed costs were higher than foundation aid and LEP revenues received for LEP students in FY 2025.
May I have a motion and a second to approve the item?
Motion from Campos.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Campos and a second by Ms. Martirano. Is there any discussion or questions? Board members, please cast your votes. The vote is approved 5-0. Next item is F3, request to the School Budget Review Committee for modified allowable growth and supplemental state aid for the special education deficit for FY25. Superintendent Smith, would you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board approve the request to School Budget Review Committee for modified allowable growth and supplemental aid in the amount of $24,918,889.64 for the special education deficit in FY 2025.
May I have a motion and a second to approve this item?
Dick, so moved.
Mayberry May second.
We have a motion by Mr. Dix and a second by Dr. Mayberry Mays. Any discussion or questions? Board members, please cast your votes. The vote is approved 5-0, 5-0. And with that, we're going to go to, are we doing the work session? No. Where's the item privilege? Okay. So board members, just so we're clear, we're going to go items of privilege, then we will adjourn to the work session, and then after the work session, we will go to the exempt session. So I know we're going to have a longer conversation in the work session around kind of a recap of the past 10 days. So I will turn to all of you for items of privilege at this point. Well, I think I'll speak on behalf of the board and thank our interim superintendent. I think to be cast into something so quickly and to stand up so tall and proud for DMPS, I hope you know how appreciative we are. You have even injured yourself after, not even 7 days on the job. And on behalf of the board, I want to say thank you very much for rising to the occasion and bringing the fight and the spirit and the feistiness that public education needs right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Other board members? Okay. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you to the community that's stood alongside us throughout whatever happens in Des Moines Public Schools. It is really rewarding work, and it's really comforting to see the amount of people that reach out, regardless if you're here wearing your public school strong shirt, if you're reaching out to us on social media, if you're sending us emails, or if you're seeing us in the hallways. We really do appreciate it. And in alignment with that, I want to say we won't be here on this day, but October 10th is Mental Illness Awareness Week, or excuse me, the 5th through the 11th. And, there are a lot of people, a lot of our students that are dealing with really difficult times right now. And I don't know if Jackie did this intentionally, but I did. You wear green to represent that you are an ally of mental health and stigma. And I would just say, keep that in mind. Our students are going through a lot. Our staff members and our teachers are going through a lot. And this is the time for us to all get together and to continue to move forward with things that actually matter to us, and that is our students, our families, and our staff. So thank you all that have continued to stand by us, both publicly, vocally, and silently.
Great, thank you. All right, with that, Superintendent Smith, I'll turn it to you for items of privilege.
Just two things real quick. The first is just want to thank Amos for continuing to host civic engagement sessions. And so there was another one, I think it was last night, and there were probably 86 folks that showed up to that. So I want to thank them for their continued efforts and just educating folks around not only the bond language, but also voter registration. And so we also have a number of informational sessions scheduled for the remainder of October. They're on our website along with the Reimagine website. Again, when we are there presenting, we are there as information providers. There are guidelines for us that we have to follow, and so we cannot be there in advocacy for or against, but we are there to share information, answer questions until the questions are end at that point in time. So sometimes we stay quite a bit. So we're happy to do that. Lastly, I guess I would offer this. This community has meant a great deal to me and my family for the last 15 years that we've lived here. And I will tell you, regardless of what's in front of us right now, being able to serve in this position and live in this community is an honor, it is a privilege, and it is a pleasure. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, we are going to thank you for joining us this evening. Without objection, the meeting is adjourned at, oh my gosh, I never know, 6:57. We are going to take board members a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back and we are going to move into an open work session to discuss board's governance and policy work. And then after that, we will recess into an exempt session. And the topic of the exempt session is to discuss the interim superintendent's contract. Okay. So we are coming back at 7:05. Okay, board members, we are going to get started. Is Jenna not here? Jenna? Sorry. Oh, thanks. Thank you. And I think Josie and Miriam are going to join us as we think about this conversation. So, board colleagues, when this was on the agenda, the goal was to continue down our path of reviewing and updating our policy governance. And so part of our goal today is to make sure that we continue down that process. So our goal for having an updated set of board policies will be complete by the end of October.
November.
What is today's date? Yeah, okay.
November.
Got it. Okay, great. So we're on track. So we're on a timeline, and we're on track to keep moving this forward. But obviously, as we think about the last 10 days, maybe now 12 days, I think we all felt like it was really important to reflect a little bit, and as a board, talk a little bit with staff about our systems, about our foundation and the strength of our foundation, to make sure that we talk about things like restoring or rebuilding our community's trust. And so the starting point of this conversation really is to talk about policy areas in partnership with our superintendent, our HR leader, our legal leader, and our board to get some feedback on, okay, now here we are. What are the systems or policies that we want to make sure to address? Are there different ways that we want to engage our community that we haven't, and to improve our feedback mechanism? So kind of broad, but I think we'll start broad and get some feedback from board members. And at the same time, before we do that, I actually think I want to ask our superintendent or team members, are there things as you think about strengthening our foundation and systems that we have in place that you want to address and call out? So I don't know, do you want to go first, or should we
Yeah,
hear
why
from the
don't we
board?
ask Josie Lewis to go first?
Tell me your question again, Jackie.
Yeah, so I think, when you think about the past 10 to 12 days, I think one of the things that's important when something like this happens, and I think everybody agreed as we talked about it, do we need to go back and think about the systems that we have in place, the foundation that we put in place, the trust that we have built with our community, and strengthen those areas. And so part of it is a look back at what we do, and are there ways to strengthen what we've done, and then also to talk about moving forward. Are there things that we should do differently? And this doesn't obviously include the search process conversation at this point. This is just our systems and policies.
Sure. So when we think about how you all are leading, that work is done through board policy. That's the direction that you give to the staff on how we are to carry out the vision that you have for the district. As we consider what that looks like, there are mandatory policies that all districts in the state of Iowa are required to have. And we've gone through a process between IASB, Miriam, and myself of reviewing those approximately 80-ish policies to make sure that we are compliant, that we are doing what we need to do, and making any adjustments that the board would like us to make. That work had started months ago, and so really we're bringing that work to you today for you to take a look at, tell us if we're on the right track, and really set a timeline. So for us, the focus right now is setting the mandatory board policies, and so that's where we really want some guidance from the board, and then look at a timeline for when you'd like those approved.
Great. And so for purposes of terminology, right, so we have board mandatory policies, and then we are also talking about, and whether that's this session or the next session, and I'm looking at Ms. Martirano to confirm, but optional policies. And for people, as we've been thinking about language, our management limitations we are probably going to turn into what we would call these optional board policies. And then the way we behave, that's more process as a board and how we interact with each other and with the superintendent, will move into what'll feel more like a standard operating procedure. Before we jump in, though, I do want to give board members an opportunity to talk or reflect at a high level on how we operate as a board, and provide any time for individuals to reflect on the past 10 or 12 days.
I can start us off. While I've only been on the board for about a year and a half, so wasn't here necessarily during some of the decisions that were made years ago, I think one of the things that I've learned throughout this process is that there is always opportunity for continuous improvement. And I think that's really been the culture of this district and the culture of the board since I've joined, is that we always want to continuously improve, regardless if that is on processes, if that's on student outcomes, if that is on better supporting our teachers and our staff. So I would say let that be the essence and the core of our conversation, is how do we continuously move forward? I think we've done enough, and the community has done enough on dwelling of the past. And at some point, we have to put that on the shelf, learn, and move forward to make ourselves better. So I would hope that that would be the spirit of the conversation, is that we're finding ways to continuously improve as a district for our students.
Thanks. Other board members? Well, I'll go. So, one of the things, and Skylar, this is your idea, but I thought it was a really good one. I think as we think about how we engage with our community, we do it individually in different ways and through our own different networks. But one of the things that I thought was really important is, as we think about how we engage with our community, is there a more structured way to make ourselves available for conversations and coffees and ways so people know if they want to come and talk about what's happening with the board, to better understand decisions that are being made? How do we do those in ways that are accessible to people? And so I thought that was a good idea. And so as we talk about the different ways that we're going to think about how we adjust and adapt, that may be one to bring out and think about, see if that's something the public's interested in. Just having a little bit more opportunity to talk about things that are on their mind, as long as we do it with 3 board members or less.
So I've thought a lot about what is important for me to say, and just around how the district needs to continue to move forward. I think that, and I know that, Madam Chair, you said something about, not talking necessarily about what's happened, but I think that everyone is thinking about what's happened, right?
Said that.
And I think that
He said it.
Okay, so Skylar, Mr. Dr. Mayberry Mace, sorry. I think that, one of the things that I have heard a lot coming directed at DMPS board is accountability. Not accepting responsibility. And I think some people feeling that perhaps we have gotten too busy pointing everywhere else, and not pointing inwardly. And I think that it is important for us to look at where we are, identify the areas of growth. Everything and everyone has to be able to grow. We have to be able to grow. And we have to look carefully at the areas that need attention. We have to be able to not repeat patterns. We have to be able to believe that we can trust the leadership that we have. And I think that it's hard for me to, I think it's hard for every one of us at the table to hear everything that's been coming our way, because it seems like the majority of comments, recommendations are not great, but there are some people that still believe that we can grow, and we will. The things, the systems that perhaps we have in place haven't been perfect, clearly. And I think that we can say that openly. I can say that as a director. Clearly, the systems that we have in place have not been the best. And that's what we need to change. It's hard to sit here, and it's hard to, in the evening time when you go home, go through your email and have people judge you and accuse you and tear you down without knowing anything about who you are as a person, what your values are. And I think that we all learn from that. I have learned from that. I have learned from the experience that as a district we have had the last, 10 days, 11 days. Every experience makes us stronger and better. And perhaps the question is, to me sometimes, that I ask myself, I said, why is this happening? And I think that I have to reframe and say and ask, what is this happening for? What is the purpose? The purpose is change and growth and learning. So, yes, we need to revisit our systems and change for the better. We have students that depend on how we change, and I accept that we can do things a lot better. Thank you.
As always, so well said. Thank you. Thank you.
So on my day job, I love dealing with policies and procedures and manuals. Honestly, a good policy is written, but we have to make sure everybody is accountable and everybody's following the procedures. So it's not that it could be a bad policy or we're doing something incorrectly. It could be on there, but we as a board and as a district, we have to do better. Holding people accountable and holding ourselves accountable. I heard a lot this week about fact checking, and yeah, we do. We have to dot our I's, cross our T's, and it's just something that we just have to work on as a district. And it starts from us, and it starts from the people in our cabinets and the people around us to make sure we're abiding. So that's one thing with our governance policy. I think what we've been working on, it's only going to work if everybody's on the same page and everybody is doing what the policy says. So that's just my little take.
Other board members?
just in reflecting on how we change our policies, that work was already underway. And I'm really proud of the work that the board has done to come together, to come to consensus, and to seek more accountability long before the cameras actually showed up for our board meeting. I think that work was already underway. And so for anybody that was here, they know that. And they know that this board has been really thoughtful about accountability. And I'll stand with my board colleagues and their decision-making in the time that I've been on the board, because I think they're incredibly professional in what they do. And I'm really proud to be here with all of you. And then I think I would just say that if you don't get better when something like this happens, you're not paying attention. And so, of course, everyone has to do a little self-reflection. And I know my behavior will be different as a result of this. And so how every board member chooses to do that is up to you. But I know, based off of the behavior that I've seen as your colleague, not only that everyone is already doing a lot of self-reflecting, but that they will be better on the other end of this. So just a lot of support for the board.
Thank you. Other board colleagues?
Super late in getting here. But I was listening on the way over, and a lot of conversation about accountability, which is incredibly important. I completely agree. And this board has done a lot of the legwork to get to this spot. I guess one thing in reflecting, and it's been a long 10 days. I feel like we've been like this and this and this, but absolutely self-reflection, absolutely growth, absolutely, accountability. But one thing that I just want to caution this board and everyone watching in our community to not apologize for, which is our Iowa Nice believing in people and our confidence. There's always trust but verify, and I don't want us to lose trust. I think that's something so special about our community. We are a community that wraps our arms around everyone and lifts each other up. And I've been thinking a lot today and about how we don't lose that, and how this moment, becomes a reflection point for us all to get better at governance and oversight, but also that we don't become jaded, and that our glasses stay rosy as well. And we believe in the possibility that exists within all of our students and all of the members in our community.
Appreciate that. So I think everybody's, I think you said it really well, Ms. Alonso, which is there's always room for improvement, and we've got to figure out where to go next. And I think, to me, one of the things that is really important is to hear from our staff about when they look at, separate from the board policies, but other places that we need to make sure we're strong. One of the things that we did talk about was making sure we have really clear vehicles of communication to be able to communicate any concerns, whether that's directly to the board or through a hotline or through different ways that we make sure that there's an opportunity for our staff and or community members and relevant members to be able to express concerns, should there be anything. I'm wondering if a good next step for us is to jump into board policies and talk about that and use that as the basis for, first of all, compliance, right? What does the state make sure that we have to do, and make sure everybody's clear on that, and then move to a conversation that is really focused on parameters around how we choose to manage the superintendent, and maybe a discussion of any things that we might do differently as a matter of reflection. Is that a good place for us to be tonight? Okay, so I'm going to turn it to Ms. Martirano, to Josie, to Miriam to lead the next part of the conversation.
Okay, so the work that we have been doing really over the last few months have been focused on those mandatory board policies. So to Jackie's question about definitions and making sure we're really clear on language that we're using, when we say mandatory board policy, we're talking about legally required policies from state or federal law. And so when I think about board policies, the policies are really the board speaking to the superintendent, and then the superintendent speaks to the staff through what we call administrative regulations. And that can be handbooks, that can be procedures, standard operating procedures, things of that nature. So what we would be proposing is to bring to you those mandatory board policies first for the board to act on those. I think we had talked about a timeline of November 11th. We would bring first reading to the board for consideration and discussion. And then second reading would be on November 25th for final approval. And then they would become active upon the final approval of the board. And then the board could choose to do additional policies, recommended policies. So one of them that I heard is, how do we communicate this out so everybody knows what our board policies are, what our expectations are, accountability? We could draft a board policy around just that, and that would be another policy the board could approve that would direct the superintendent and the staff on how you want that communicated out to the rest of the school community. So that's what we would be talking about in terms of the mandatory policies and the work that's been done thus far. Miriam?
I agree. I think that all sounds, consistent with what we've been discussing and looking forward to rolling out with the board. I think this will be a really good opportunity for the board to take a critical look at governance and, making sure that everything that needs to be communicated from the board is established in board policy.
Yeah, and I think, as we think about reflection, one of the things I know when we joined the board was an observation that a lot of power had been, responsibility and power had been ceded to the superintendent. And so I think this brings back the power balance a little bit to where there is a partnership, but there's also oversight. And I think the policies actually give us the mechanism to have that oversight and/or to discuss as a board. This is an operational issue that is, delegated to the superintendent, depending upon what it is. But I think it's a pushback in the structure where we want it to be.
Yeah, so a good example of that would be the bullying and harassment policy. Board says board won't tolerate bullying and harassment, and the board directs the superintendent to develop administrative regulations implementing this board policy. Then Matt works with those of us on his team to determine what's that complaint form look like? What's the timelines students and families have to respond and submit that? What's the timeline for our staff to respond to those complaints? So that comes in the administrative regulations and procedures that then would be adopted in response to your policy.
What is the expectation in the onboarding process of an employee to understand policy as it relates to their role? So when somebody's onboarded, obviously, you get probably handed something. And I'm just wondering how that works. And as we think about cascading policy all the way down to staff to understand their role in all of this, is that part of the onboarding process?
So it's part of our employee handbook that reflects the need to know about policies and procedures and sign off on that on an annual basis. So it's not necessarily through the onboarding process, but it's through the annual trainings that we do, the employees are responsible for. They aren't required to read every policy. The language is something to the effect of they need to know where to find them, and I can't remember the specific
I believe
language.
in the employment handbook, there is kind of a compilation of board policies directly related to employees that are part of that employment information handbook that they are told that they're responsible for reviewing and being familiar with the contents of. That doesn't mean that they have to review every board policy. You have 9 series, of board policies. Everything from finance and operations to food and nutrition is covered in those. And so every employee isn't necessarily going to be expected to be familiar with every one of those policies, but certainly the individual departments would be expected to review with employees what they need to know about the policies relevant to their position. And then that employment information handbook would have that compilation of employee-specific board policies at the end of it that are updated periodically as board policies may be updated as well.
One thing that I've seen before is like onboarding, where you have the basic employee handbook that they sign off on. And then once they go to their respective department, that department head will have a specific smaller handbook that's specifically for their job titles. So I wonder if that could possibly be an option.
There are, and I think one of the things that we've talked about is trying to make sure that there's a little bit more consistency and oversight on what, making sure that getting the board policies in place and having those where you want them to be functionally as a board, then everything needs to flow from that, right? So making sure that after this gets done, those handbooks, the procedures get developed, and then the handbooks get looked at to ensure that whatever changes might be made, that the handbooks ultimately are consistent with those board policies as well, because it really all starts at the top with those board policies. Everything that's being done in those, sort of lower order documents has to flow directly from board policy and be consistent with it. So that would be eventually part of this process. I think the board policy review is step one, and then that would come, kind of later on a timeline. I'm assuming that Matt would be directing.
And then I would also like to see it in different languages, just translated, Spanish, Swahili, the other languages that we have, because it's so much easier for our other employees to be able to read it.
I think one of the things I was thinking about in reflection, as we all have reflected on this, a lot of people think that the school board, played a pivotal role in maybe knowing or not knowing. And but I think what's really important to me is understanding, are there things that were missed broadly? And so a question I had about whistleblower policy, about our, anonymous complaints and concerns. Can you talk a little bit about whether it's in board policy because the state mandates it, or what recommendations you would have, or maybe that you've even thought about, Matt, that just ensure that there's a feedback mechanism for addressing, and again, is it addressing waste, fraud, and abuse? I'm not sure what the parameters are, but can you talk either about what other school districts do, or what we currently have and what we could do to shore that up?
I don't believe there's a specific state law that requires school districts to have an anonymous reporting mechanism. I would say that there are some public entities that have that. I don't know how many school districts have it. It's certainly something I think that the district has been discussing, sort of over the last period of months, if that's something that would be helpful for, whether it's, like you said, waste, fraud, and abuse, or a complaint reporting process.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, I think the way I sort of reflect on that is accessibility, right, of both staff and community to know and understand where they can go in multiple platforms in order to actually report waste, fraud, and abuse. One of the things I keep sort of reflecting on is accessibility of understanding policy beyond language, but in terms of where we're placing it in each of our documents, so that there's continuity, there's consistency, and there's an exchange between our community and our staff and our administration around how we engage with practice that either is aligned or unaligned with what our policy states. Right now, those are typically manifesting in just conversations via email and things like that. Creating a more formalized platform that is accessible is something that I think that we'd be interested in moving forward with.
Yeah, I don't know if it was with you, Skylar, that we had this conversation, because even in the way that when parents or community members or concerned citizens come to us, some come to email, right? And then we navigate those differently than if they come through the, what's it called, the reporting system when you first log on. Yeah, the ticket system. And, some people express their thoughts there. And then other places, I know other school districts have the whole chain of command. on the website. So you can direct a parent or a student, like what's the process, right? If this isn't going, go here. If this isn't happening. So everybody follows the same pathway to get to, answering questions. So, and I think I'm relating that to consistency, right? Consistency of how and where you direct people, and how you weight the email that you get as a school board member from a parent versus somebody who fills out a ticket or somebody who picks up the phone and calls somebody. So a consistency of how we're taking feedback. And I think one thing, and Jenna, you said this, was the full circle back to know if the feedback that somebody gave was addressed, or if it wasn't addressed, that they were notified in some way, that that they were heard in some way. So that's more broadly about how we're engaging with our community, but it's also how is the staff handling feedback that they're getting and following through all the way back to the parent or the community member or the student.
So, sorry.
Perdón. I appreciate that, Madam Chair. I think the full circle, and I think one of the things that I often hear is, people reaching out, but not knowing who's responsible for getting back to them. And so being transparent about, what this system might entail. So who's responsible for responding, a time frame, and then how do we know that there was a resolution? Because I think it's just transparency. And I think that helps families, staff, just be more engaged and talk about regaining, restoring trust in our community. I think that this is a great way to do it.
How often does an employee who has conditions for employment have to sign an acknowledgement of our policies? Do you have to just sign it once and then you're employed, and however many years you're employed, that's
Annually.
annually? Okay.
Login too, when they log in.
Yeah, they acknowledge.
I think they acknowledge.
So they acknowledge all the policies. I guess I'm asking if that acknowledgement of policies includes a reconfirmation of the conditions of their employment. In other words, nothing has changed in my conditions of employment, so I can continue to be here. I acknowledge our policies.
I don't think it's that direct. I don't think it's that direct. Other than when they would re-sign their contracts, like, some of our employees sign an annual contract, that would have conditions of employment. But in terms of like an annual tied in with the policies, no, I don't think that would exist.
I'd be interested in a recommendation on the legality of that and whether it would be an appropriate policy given the fact that the district has a lot of certified and licensed individuals.
Yeah, you've got quite a few different units of employees, right? Some of whom are subject to a collective bargaining agreement that's being, renegotiated on a periodic basis. Some of whom have individual contracts, some of whom have letters of assignment. They don't have a contract, but they do get that letter of assignment or work directive, whatever you guys are calling it. I'm not sure that I could speak to every single classification, but I believe just about every employee is going to be covered by one of those, and be notified of what their, salary and benefits would be on an annual basis through that. Like when the master contract is ratified, that goes out to every member of that bargaining unit through the union, after it's ratified by both parties.
Just an observation as I'm listening to this question to make sure that we effectively use the time. I think part of what's really important for us is to put at the top what we think is kind of the most, what are we trying to address? And so, question like that, Patrick, I don't know if it's an issue or not, right? As we're brainstorming different things, I think part of what's really important to hear back from the staff is to understand kind of in the prioritization of systems and policies, what direction is the board want to make clear as a high priority? And what have you identified as areas that require a significant focus first? Because there's always going to be work to do. There's always going to be continuous improvement to do. And so what I think I want to make sure that we're doing as a board is giving as clear direction as we can on items of importance that we want to put at the top. And I guess I would try and articulate it as saying risk mitigation. And let's define what risk mitigation is, but I think everything should be the lens for us around risk mitigation. We can't bear any more, risks and crises. And so as you think about where we need to shore up systems, how does that drive your thinking? And from the board, the same way, right? Is there a particular area of risk? Clearly, I think when and if we have a conversation around a search process, there will be a very significant conversation about how do we mitigate risk in that area. Same thing with transparency and disclosure and conflict of interest and ethics, and probably want to shore up that piece as it relates to the superintendent, separate from board, separate from employees. But I want to make sure as a board we're giving as clear of guidance as we can to the staff, and then for the staff to be able to elevate what they think in the systems and processes that really requires a lot of significant focus. And I think what I'm hearing is it's those board policies. You got to get those done.
I think it's the mandatory board policies. And then from what I am hearing from all of you tonight, the idea of this continuous improvement loop and the cycle of honoring that would be that we would bring back, Kim and I talked today about the bringing forward a board policy, not mandatory, but would identify on what cycle each of the board series will be reviewed, so that when we have things that you have identified or heard from the community, we can discuss that as the policy comes up to the full board, and we can amend or change the policies to account for that. And then how we communicate that out and then go downstream with the administrative regulations.
And I think one of the things that the board that we had put in the manual was that there is some proof, I need a better word, or evidence that things have cascaded from top to bottom. So we know that there's consistency, because I think that that was an area of improvement for DMPS. And so how does the board know on a regular basis, absent approving every, parent handbook in every school district, which is not something that the board should be doing, that it has cascaded all the way through? So I think that evidence to the board on a regular basis and a recommendation on how to handle that would be welcome.
Perhaps this is maybe more specific, but I have been curious, and so I think that this is an appropriate time. I'm wondering about onboarding new employees and orientation. And depending, I think, on the position or the work that new employee will be doing, perhaps there might be different needs for language knowledge. And I'm curious about orientation. Does that take place in only English? And do you get everyone in a room on a certain day and everybody sits through the same thing? But what happens when someone perhaps doesn't feel completely 100% comfortable with doing it in English? And so considering, it's just different considerations, right? Mm-hmm. How do we make sure that staff onboarding is truly understandable and information that's accessible?
So I can speak to it actually as a relatively new employee, because I've recently sat through our onboarding process, and our team has orientation and onboarding every Monday morning. Sometimes that gets more specific based on time of year. So for example, teachers, we bring all of our new teachers together in August. And onboard them all together as a group. And then substitutes, we bring onboard them all together. So sometimes we have a big enough group that we can onboard similar groups at a time. And then there are times we have translators. Interpreters, sorry. We have interpreters that come in based on different employee needs. So yes, we do have that. Yep.
One of the things that I would offer as I'm thinking about this conversation is maybe just kind of a filter over the conversation for an appetite to include community in some capacity as part of these conversations. And I know that can't be for all spaces. Certainly, we're not going to have a community member on the superintendent evaluation committee, but maybe in exploring what a anonymous hotline may look like, we're incorporating community into those conversations in the development of policy. I think there's an appetite from the community to support and find ways to be more supportive, and there's certainly an expertise that exists within our community that maybe we don't have in-house.
Yep. I think on that one area that that I'm really proud of as a board that we are moving. I think we just have to set the threshold numbers around greater transparency around contracts, around personnel. Those are two things that I know we all elevated that are in process. I think one of the things that's interesting when I reflect on our role as managers of one person is I'm actually not sure. I think we could be far clearer on our expectations around transparency of the superintendent. And by that, I mean the things that come to my mind. We all fill out a conflict of interest form. I think our superintendent should fill out a conflict of interest form. I think that there should be greater financial transparency around travel and travel approvals, budget approvals. I think, it's when you try and suggest something when somebody's in the seat, it's not personal, it's actually risk mitigation. And I think that was something we all grappled with a little bit. And so we have a moment right now to say, what is the radical transparency that we want from our district? And look, I think, we talk about how are we going to restore trust and rebuild trust. Part of it is being more transparent. And so I don't exactly know what that looks like. I think at a minimum, conflict of interest, approval for trips and travel. And there's probably and that's where community leaders might have other ideas on how to make sure that there's transparency. And, it doesn't have to be just the superintendent. There may be other roles where that type of transparency is really important. Somebody who might oversee contracts, right? Who's things like that. But I think that's a way to strengthen our trust building process. Are there other, because again, what I want to make sure we're doing is trying to speak generally with one voice as a board of prioritizing what we think is important. And we're talking about community mechanisms, we're talking about feedback loop with community around complaints and concerns, a little bit of onboarding, when our interim superintendent may be the first to be willing to talk about and fill out a conflict of interest form that's publicly shared and things like that. Where do we want to go next with this conversation? Because I want to make sure we actually finalize do we want to talk about the policies? Do people have questions about the policies that were sent out by Kim at this point? Do we feel comfortable with saying the next step is just blanket approval of those board policies? The mandatory board policies?
It would not be, that would not be the next step. Next step would be first read.
First reading.
And then, so you've received a draft copy of the mandatory policies, the 80 or so that Josie referenced. There are still edits to be made and approved by legal. So we would not have first read until the first meeting in November. And after that is when approval would occur.
And our goal is
It's just mandatory policies right now.
And we would plan to get those to you, not just for the agenda, we would get them to you well in advance because it's so many. So we're not just gonna get them to you the Friday before, we'll get them to you in advance of that.
The three optional policies, I'm calling them optional because I think that's the language that we said we wanted to use. One of them is around threshold dollar figure for contracts.
It's in there.
Personnel is the second one. Those, when are we going to see those? Because I think those are really important ones.
Those are in there.
Oh, they're in there too.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Great. Matt, any reflections on the conversation to date or things you want to add?
Nothing other than we've already talked about. I'm thinking about the opportunity in front of the board and district leadership, given the role that I play as an interim, for us to really test some things out and begin to actually navigate some waters that we are all willing to swim in right now. So I would just encourage the board to take full opportunity of the interim title, and I will be gladly able to assist in that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate that. Okay, so with that, thank you. Thanks for the hard work. I also think this is maybe an opportune time for the board as a whole to thank, we thanked Matt earlier, to thank you, Miriam, to thank you, Josie, to thank the rest of the executive team and the cabinet and tactical team and everybody, because everybody dropped everything to step up and support and lead. So I just want to make sure everybody in the back row and sitting all around that really blew up everything to help the district. Thank you. Thanks for your work. We really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Okay. I think with that, are we good to close up this work session? Our next discussion point is that we are going to go into exempt session to have a conversation about the interim superintendent contract. And so at that point, everybody is going to be asked to leave. And board will grab food, 5 minutes, and then come back. And I think Josie and Miriam are remaining in this conversation. Is that right, Miriam? Okay, perfect. Great. Yeah. I think for a bit, it would be okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so board members, how about 8 o'clock sharp? Okay.
So I would put a note out to with just specifics around that.
Yeah.
You can either take a screenshot, it's not really an easy way to do it. If you don't have anything, just confirm the positive or negative. So just be on the lookout for any.
Can repeat the first part because I.
Oh, why don't you turn your mic? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.